Good morning. It is morning. Good morning. Today is January 16th, and welcome to a briefing of the Ways and Means Committee by the State Department and Assessments and Taxation. I will start off by saying that you can find all the documents and the agenda on the, well, let me read Sarah's note here. On today's date on the website. What is this? You can find the document and agenda on MGA website, Ways and Means hearing schedule on today's date. So that's in a different location than where you would normally, I mean, you guys aren't looking for it anyway, but if that's in a different location, then you find the submitted testimony. So if you have a problem finding it, let me know. Send me a text message or ask Liz back here. And with that, I will ask Estat to please come forward. Welcome. We have with us Mr. Michael Higgs, the director, Corbett Webb, the state tax sale ombudsman. We have, Miss Clark instead of Miss Dunn. I'm sorry. Oh. And Mr. Greenberg, the legislative liaison, and I will let Mr. Higgs, welcome. Good to see you again. Happy New Year.
Morning. For the record, I am Michael Higgs, Director of the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. Homeowners in Maryland saw a significant rise in property values over the past 3 years. The department splits Maryland's 2+ million property accounts into 3 groups, assessing each group once every 3 years. All assessments are based on the market value of a property, and any inspections of a property are external only. Since their last reassessment in 2021, Group 3 properties have seen a 23.4% increase in value. Breaking the numbers down, Maryland residential properties saw a 25.6% increase in the last 3 years, and commercial properties values saw a 17.6% increase. And I want to take a moment to break that down a little bit further. There's a lot of news about commercial properties, particularly office space values being hit very hard lately. We're only just now seeing the tip of the iceberg on bank short sales, and that's resulting in new appeals on the commercial office space side. But the market for industrial commercial properties is still extremely strong. So that's helping to keep that number up as well. These numbers show that owning a home or a business in the state of Maryland continues to be a good investment. As Governor Moore has highlighted, however, there's a lack of supply in housing stock. This, compounded with surging demand following the pandemic, has driven the exceptional rate of increase in assessment values that we've seen of late. The department is committed to proactively connecting homeowners in need of assistance with some of the vital services we provide. However, there is always more that can be done to fulfill our mission of leaving no one behind. The Renters Tax Credit Program has faced dwindling enrollment numbers in the recent years as income thresholds for eligibility set in law remain unchanged. At least 6 months prior to the application deadline, we send reminders to approximately 32,000 customers on our distribution list. To try to reach each and every Marylander in need, the department has also sent out more than 22,000 postcards in the last 3 years as part of a targeted campaign to find and enroll new potentially eligible applicants into the Renters Tax Credit. Despite our outreach efforts, enrollment in the Renters Tax Credit dropped by nearly 10% between fiscal years 22 and 23. The Homeowners Tax Credit has also seen a decline in enrollment. From fiscal year 22 to 23, the number of homeowners eligible for homeowners tax credit has decreased by more than 2,000, or a decline of more than 5%. The department anticipates that this decline will continue unless the income thresholds are adjusted in statute. With a projected enrollment of only 35,800 eligible applicants by 2025, the department will see a drop of 10,000 eligible applicants in only 6 years. The department is committed to delivering the best possible service to its customers and the people of Maryland, and looks forward to partnering with the General Assembly to shore up its efforts. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have on these topics that I've covered. But we also have Corbett Webb, who is going to talk about the homeowners protection program.
Do a little musical chairs real quickly. Sorry about that. You go back to the first slide, please. Oh. All right. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Corbett Webb. I'm the State Tax Sale Ombudsman. I recently replaced Bob Yeager, who I'm sure many of you guys know. Bob did a tremendous job getting the program up and running, and I'm looking forward to continuing with his success. I'm going to spend a few minutes this morning talking about the Office of the State Tax Sale Ombudsman. Then I'm going to talk about the relatively new homeowner protection program in more detail. The Office of the State Tax Sale Ombudsman was created in 2020 with two main goals: providing statewide transparency on the many nuanced aspects of tax sale processes statewide, and providing individualized assistance to help homeowners pay their taxes and avoid tax sale. Every year, we send a 50-question survey to Maryland jurisdictions to learn more about their tax sale processes. And if you haven't had a chance, I'd recommend you check out our fiscal year 23 annual report, which can be found on dat.maryland.gov/tax sale. On pages 6 through 11 in particular, we list a number of insights and improvements that we will be making to our program this coming year. Some of those highlights include nearly a dozen changes to our annual survey to the counties that will allow us to more comprehensively collect data to inform future recommendations. We've also kicked off conversations with Maryland's open data portal to be able to host data from the survey on their website. This will allow anyone, including the public, to create visualizations of tax sale data and more easily compare data between jurisdictions and over time periods. The report also discusses a number of pieces of legislation that passed last year, which will significantly assist homeowners, thanks to many of the members on this committee. And we're looking forward to another successful session over the next few months. There are many more insights and recommendations in the report, so I encourage you to take a look. But on to the more personalized part of our job, helping homeowners. We've structured the Office of the State Tax Sale Ombudsman, the Homeowner Protection Program, so that we really work as one team. And I'm excited to say that team is fully staffed and operational for the first time as of September of last year. The way it works is whether we reach out to a homeowner, receive a referral for them, or they contact us, they started our tax sale helpline. We follow a comprehensive process to gather as much information as possible. We look up their property tax bills, their real property profile, their tax credit history, and listen to what they're saying to provide the best individualized assistance as possible to help them pay their taxes. And this is really where I think our program shines. We work across state agencies, across state and local governments, and with community organizations to provide as comprehensive a solution as possible. Homeowners don't want to hear that they should be contacting another agency or that they should have to contact local county governments. They just want help, and I can't help you is not in our vocabulary. And for the first time, the tax sale helpline was added to SDAT's new and improved reassessment notices, which went out to about 750,000 property owners 2 weeks ago. When contacted by property owners, in many cases, we've been able to provide them with some information they did not know previously that will help them qualify for credits, pay their taxes, and avoid tax sale. Here's one example of how we help. One call we received was from a 93-year-old homeowner who simply wanted to know how to appeal her assessment. Thanks to our comprehensive process, while on the phone, we looked up her property tax bill and informed her that she was delinquent on her taxes. She had no idea before contacting us. She also hadn't applied for the homestead or the homeowner's tax credits, both of which she's likely eligible for. After providing her with all this information and more, she felt like she would be able to make a full payment on her taxes. We ended the call, mailed her a recap of our conversation because she wasn't comfortable with email. And that's step one of our assistance process, providing information. But our work doesn't stop there. We added a reminder in our system to follow up with her in early February to make sure she was still on track with applying for the credits and making her tax payment. If If she's experiencing any roadblocks at that time, that's when we're going to step in and try to help facilitate a solution, whether it's with SSTAT programs, other state agencies, or local governments. That's an example of the assistance we provide to everyone who contacts us, and is also the best case scenario when we can work proactively with someone to help them pay their taxes before they end up in the tax sale process. However, if that assistance isn't enough, or if a homeowner is already in tax sale, that's when we go to step 3, which is the homeowner protection program. The homeowner protection program, also known as the HPP, is an alternative pathway to the tax sale process. It aims to reduce tax collection costs, assist homeowners in paying their taxes, and allow them to stay in their homes. Importantly, the HPP is a loan program with a 3-year repayment period to help homeowners of limited income regain their financial footing. The program offers personalized repayment plans and ongoing support to enrollees, in addition to what the tax sale helpline would provide. Next slide. To be enrolled in the HPP, the homeowner must meet the following requirements. The home must be the principal residence of the homeowner. They must have a combined household income of $60,000 or less, and the home's assessed value must be $300,000 or less. These are the minimum statutory requirements for enrollment. Excellent. There are also some statutory preferences for enrollment. We give enrollment priority to homeowners that are at least 60 years old, are currently receiving federal disability benefits, have total assets that are $200,000 or less, or have been residing in the home for at least 10 years. The HPP is also required to enroll at least one homeowner per county. Once a homeowner is enrolled in the program, we work with them to assess their needs and create a personalized assistance and repayment plan for the homeowner to repay the loan. We pay off the homeowner's debt to the county or third party, which will remove them from the tax sale process. We then help the homeowner access financial and housing counseling, as well as other resources such as credits and grants. And we maintain monthly contact with the homeowner to monitor and assist with their progress. When a homeowner is enrolled in the program, they are likely being enrolled for more than 1 year's worth of property taxes. And here's an example of how that timeline can play out. On July 1, 2020, or the homeowner's July 1, 2022 taxes become delinquent. Their July 2023 taxes become due. The homeowner applies for and enrolls in the HPP in August of 2023. It's unlikely that they'll be able to pay back 2 years worth of taxes before their next tax bill becomes due, not to mention also being prepared to pay their July 2024 taxes. To account for this, the law requires the HPP to become exclusively responsible for paying enrollee taxes for 3 years after the date of enrollment, with some exceptions. In this scenario on the slide, we'll likely pay their 2024, 2025, and 2026 taxes and adjust their loan each time. When we pay their 2026 taxes, their loan will be extended through 2029. This gives us ample amount of time to work with enrollees and prepare them to pay their taxes timely in the long run. If they're able to repay their loan and regain their financial footing sooner, even better, and they're unenrolled from the program. Any advance payments that a homeowner makes does not incur a penalty, and it goes directly towards paying off their principal. Based on our previous interactions, we've included some frequently asked questions. Is this a grant program? No. The HPP is a 3-year loan program with 6% interest that is calculated within the homeowner's monthly repayments. Are HPP funds actively available to assist homeowners? Yes, we are currently accepting applications, and we accept applications year-round. Do you aid homeowners after the lien has been purchased by a third party? Yes. The HPP can pay the homeowner's lien and all other attorney fees and interest associated with the tax lien while they're in a redemption status. Before we open up for questions, I wanted to provide a snapshot of current enrollment status and discuss how the fund is managed. Although we expected more enrollees in 2023, we only enrolled 7 homeowners last year. This is because a separate temporary program funded by federal COVID relief was available called the Homeowner Assistance Fund, better known as HAF. HAF was managed by DHCD and provided a grant, whereas the Homeowner Protection Program provides a loan. Many homeowners we otherwise would have enrolled in our program, we instead helped to apply for the HAF since it was more generous. HAF funding expired in October, So we're anticipating having 75 homeowners enroll in the HPP by June 30 of this year. Tax sales also occur annually from March to June. So this will be the first year we've accepted applications without half. In fact, we've already approved 8 additional homeowners for enrollment over the past month and have another 19 homeowners we plan on enrolling in the next month. And there's really no shortage of homeowners who can benefit from our program. In 2022, more than 13,000 owner-occupied liens were advertised for tax sale, with about 4,000 of those liens being offered for tax sale. And this is despite Baltimore City and Baltimore County removing all owner-occupied properties from their tax sales. And last but not least, the monthly principal and interest payments made by current enrollees are reinvested into the Homeowner Protection Fund. This helps the program to become self-funded, and that money can then be used to enroll future homeowners in the program. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee might have.
Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Madam Chair. I'm sorry. No worries.
Delegate Attar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So how do the local jurisdictions let them know when their property is going up for tax sale that this program exists?
They do. So information about the tax sale helplines included on every tax bill that goes out. Information about that and the homeowner protection program is included on every initial tax sale notice that goes out. As I mentioned, we also included it on SSTAT's reassessment notices that go out every January. But connecting the homeowners in need with the program is one of the most serious challenges that we face. We do outreach with community groups. We've met in the past month with all the county finance offices. We've also met with all of real properties or SSTAT's real property assessment offices. We've met with 3 other community organizations and have another 4 meetings set up by the end of January. So we really are trying to get information out there. In addition, legislation passed last year that requires us to spend some of our budget on outreach, specifically targeted for homeowners whose liens have been sold at tax sale.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I think Delegate Plakovich-Carr used to sit there. I was like stuck in the previous, I'm sorry. Now Delegate Plakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for the presentation. Director Higgs, I have a question for you in regards to your outreach efforts for the renters tax credit. And first of all, thank you, for the department's very targeted outreach efforts on that front. I'm curious if you've been able to do any sort of analysis of those postcards or other targeted outreach that you've done to see like what percentage of those people that received that notification actually ended up applying.
I don't have those numbers, but it is very difficult to track down renters and for us to get a hold of who is a renter and who is not, and to get their address and get something out to them. Renters can change residences, every year sometimes, and it makes it's a very difficult constituency for us to get to. So it's really word of mouth and some of the community groups like Mr. Webb was mentioning that we rely on quite heavily in addition to our postcard outreach efforts.
Thank you.
Delegate Feldmark and then Delegate Ebersol.
So thank you for the presentation. I do have a few questions about the homeowner protection program, but before that, Director Higgs, thank you for your opening remarks. I did not keep up in my note taking. Would you be willing to share a copy of those with us? Or
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, regarding the HPP, I guess one question I have, the eligibility, the income eligibility of $60,000 per household. What definition of income are we using there? Is that the same very broad definition of income from the homeowner tax credit, or is it more in line with income tax?
It mirrors the homeowner's tax.
Okay, so the same decrease that Director Higgs was speaking to in terms of eligibility for the tax credit would also be impacting eligibility for this assistance.
It definitely impacts
Okay.
eligibility. It's not so much a decrease just because of different amount and volume.
I
But it
see.
does impact.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. And then the other question I had, I really appreciate the example you had on slide 8, sort of giving the timeline. So the loan takes on the tax liability in that example for years 2024 through 2026. Is there any assistance or relief on interest and late fees that have already accumulated on 2022 and 2023 taxes, or is that simply part of the payment plan? How does that factor in?
So that that becomes part of the payment plan and the total loan amount, because we do have to pay those interest and fees, whether they're owed to the county or whether they're owed to a third party that purchased the lien. So we just combine that all into one lump sum and then determine the 3-year loan repayment based on that. I do want to say that that slide, I thought it was important to emphasize the extent to which the department is becoming liable. But, you know, there might be some people who we enroll them. I mean, there's one gentleman who we're planning on enrolling, he only owes $500 and he thinks he can pay that off within a year. So it might not always be this 9-year period. But, you know, every time that someone can pay off their loan to us, that just frees up money that we can then spend on other homeowners.
Thank you for your presentation. You talked about half versus the HPP program that you have. And, you know, you gave a startling number, only 7 in HPP, but you quickly said, do you have any number of, can you elucidate the number of people that were in half that you directed there or that were doing that? And are most of them transitioning or are they done?
Sure. Excuse me, I was actually looking up those numbers right before the committee. There were about 70 people who we referred to the HAF grant in 2023. I believe 3 of them, just because of the unique circumstances, we actually enrolled in the HPP in lieu of them being approved for the HAF grant, just because they needed some immediate relief. We aren't doing anything right now to monitor those homeowners because we monitored it up until the point that they did receive the HAF grant. By receiving the HAF grant, they were able to pay off their outstanding tax liability.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your numbers are comparable. You expect 75 soon. So good on you. Thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for coming and giving the presentation, my favorite group to have. The renters program. So if somebody lives in a multifamily building, how does that work as far as, are they getting a % of the property tax back to them because it's assumed they're paying that through their rent? What?
That is how that works. It's not directly tied to the property tax. It is it's tied to their income and their rental amount. And then it's assumed that part of the rental amount is the property owner's property tax, and the renter's tax credit goes to cover that portion.
I think that's a safe assumption to think the landlord's going to be adding that to the rent.
I think it's safe, yeah.
So a question, you said it's hard to reach the renters. So have you ever considered looking at the MDE, like list of landlords that filed the lead paint, whatever it is, I had the file that would show it's a rental property, and then I've had the lead certification done as a basis for a mailing list?
I don't believe we've looked into that, but that's a fabulous idea that I'll take back to my tax credits team and have them investigate it.
That would give you a good clue as to who's renting. And then also the local tax, like not tax, but rental license. You know, if you reached out to the county and said, hey, we're trying to help your people, can you share with us who's applying for a rental license? I think that may give you another good mailing list.
Excellent. Thank you for the tip. Appreciate it.
Just a thought. Question, what % of properties at reassessment are actually looked at?
We look at all of the properties.
So every 6,000 or 600,000 properties, you walk by and done a visual on?
No. Walk by and doing a visual is different than looked at. We have oblique aerial imaging that covers 9 counties in the state. That is an excellent tool for being able to do desktop assessments. The law was changed a couple of years ago to remove the requirement that we have boots on the ground for every reassessment, as it was physically impossible for the department to meet those goals, and we were subject to OLA audit findings every year for that. So now the law has been changed, and we meet the IAAO standards, International Assessing Officers Standards, for physical inspections of properties upon transfer. If there is a construction permit for over $100,000 worth of improvements, and a couple of other things that trigger a physical inspection. Otherwise, we're using sales data, and it's a heavily data-driven process.
So it's just based on, you put like a formula across the board or something across a particular neighborhood as far as percentage increase?
More and more, yes.
Okay. How, like for the homestead credit, you said it's down so much. How quickly, if somebody reaches out to apply for that homestead tax credit, is that updated?
It's updated much more quickly now. Our tax credit team is caught up. Whereas in previous years, around this time of year, they were pretty far behind. I think it's a testament to Jamanise's hard work in helping our tax credit team come up with a lot more efficient ways of getting things done. But also, unfortunately, the drop in enrollments, as noted, just in raw data, means we have less applications to process per application processor.
But that doesn't answer my question as to how long does it take?
How long does it take? A piece of mail comes in. These are basically handwritten applications at this point. We do have a new online system that is set to go live next month. Knock on wood. Hopefully that goes right. But I'd say it's, what do you think? 3 weeks maybe from it getting keyed in till it getting transferred to the county finance office, maybe a month.
Okay, because that raises concern. Last year when you guys did this, I looked at my kid's property and noticed my daughter wasn't up on where she should be, and that was taken care of. And I just looked again when you guys came, and it's still not reflecting. So
is this homestead or homeowner?
Homestead.
See, homestead,
homeowner. Well, no, homestead.
Homeowner's
right.
the tax credit.
No, the homestead like property. Is this your primary residence? Yes
right,
or no?
Right. So we had some issues with our with the homestead system over the past year. Those have been worked out finally. It was a problem with the mainframe, whereas we needed access codes for every individual customer's account. And going through the mainframe just made that a nightmare. I couldn't keep a mainframe developer last year for more than 3 weeks before they realized that they could make $100,000 more leaving us and going somewhere else. So it was a revolving door there, unfortunately, but it's been finally resolved, and any homestead issues should be cleared up. Reach out to our office if you have any constituents or family members or anyone that has issues with that, and we'll help make sure it gets cleared
So
up.
which one is handling that? I'll catch up with you.
So that'll be county. You would reach out to your county assessment office is the one. It'd be your first point of contact on that.
Right. Last question. Well, any property, is there a policy that exists within the department that if a property sells within the 3-year time frame of that assessment window, that property has to be assessed at 95 to 100% of that property?
No.
So that is not
because we need to look at that the sale and find out whether that was an arm's length transaction. And all too often, it's not an arm's length transaction that we can use as a valid comp, and we have to do a separate valuation. But if it is an arm's length transaction, then absolutely it should be taken as evidence of market value.
So then that is policy. If you're telling me if it's an arm's length transaction,
yes.
Then that is policy.
Yes.
But if you consider commercial property and the unique situation we had this year where interest rates rose quicker than we've ever seen them in history, that would change the value within that 3 years, within a year, very quickly on triple net properties. So do you think you need to look at that policy? Because if you're holding your people to that policy, and in a situation like we had over these last couple of years with interest rates rising quickly changing the value of triple net properties, do you think that?
Well, if it's an income property, it's an income producing property, then we're going to be valuing it based on the income method. So it's,
But the
all
cap
your-
rate would change because of interest rates changing. If you're making your offices hold to 95 or 100%,
right?
the income stays the same, but the value is not worth it. That mail comes out and says, as of January 1st, this piece of property is worth this, and that's what you're appealing it based on, not what it was worth within the last 3 years. So that's why I'm concerned about your paper saying this is what it's worth. You have a policy for these people to do it, and it's really a bad policy and a false statement because you're saying regardless, you want those people to hold that property value within 95 to 100% of purchase. And based on, interest rates and stuff, that's not necessarily the case because with the changing interest rates, the cap rate change is affecting the value of the property. The three pieces to that equation: rent, cap rate, price. As cap rates rise, the value of that property decreases, changes quickly within well less than 3 years. So just have concerns for that policy if that's the case. And the statement, you're saying it's worth this, but it's really not. It's just they're holding to a policy. Then you have that I'm saying could be causing a problem.
Noted.
Thank you.
Delegate Wu, then Delegate Henson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the team. I have a few questions about that 6% interest rate. Why 6%? Can that be lower or?
So statute allows us to assess an up to 6% interest rate with the discretion to lower it. But the thing about the HPP is it's striving to be self-funded. So that interest is needed to allow the program to continue as long as possible. If there was a different funding method, we'd be more interested in lowering that interest rate, and we would love to lower it, but that is kind of necessary to keep the program operating at this time.
So if the mortgage interest from the bank, like 3%, you still put 6% there?
I'm sorry?
If the buyer, like homeowner, can get an interest from like 3% from bank, I still put 6% there?
So we would still assess a 6% interest rate. Kind of to that point, something that we are looking into is at different points in the tax sale process, counties or third parties who purchase a lien charge different interest rates, and that varies by counties. Sometimes they charge an interest rate and a penalty rate. And we've realized recently that I don't want to say shouldn't be, but if we're enrolling someone in the HPP and we're going to charge a higher interest rate than they would have to pay if they're at the county level, that's a factor that we need to consider. Sorry, that answer your...
No, I think the point is like, if they can get an interest rate from bank 3%, you are still charging 6% for this program. That doesn't make any sense. Does that sound right?
It does. I don't think the people who we enroll in our program can typically go to a bank to get a loan in that amount at a low interest rate. The homeowner protection program is in many ways a program of last resort. These are homeowners who can't get any more resources from any other places. We do refer them to financial counseling before they're enrolled and then also after they're enrolled. We've worked with HUD counselors as well for different specific homeowners, but I don't think they'd be able to go to a financial institution and get a lower interest rate loan to cover their taxes.
I see. So the second question, how big of your loan in total amount for each year?
So the program's budget or a loan for a specific?
Is the budget.
Yeah, so the program received funding of $750,000 for fiscal 23, 24, and 25, as well as an additional $1.3 million supplemental appropriation last year. And as I mentioned before, because of that interest and because the payments made back into the fund are reinvested into homeowners, the program does strive to be self-funded. So at this time, it doesn't have any direct statutory funding beginning in fiscal 26, but that doesn't mean the program ends in fiscal 26.
So for 75 homeowners you talked about earlier, that means probably average loan is that $10,000,
so
or less.
The average loan is between $3,500 and $4,000. We are not maxing out our budget, and that's on purpose because it is a continuing non-lapsing fund that doesn't revert at the end of the year. we're, especially with the HAF program, we're scaling up. You know, something else that we need to take into account since we are enrolling more people, for approximately every 75 homeowners enrolled in the program, that's one full-time staff person to do case management. It ends up being about 2 hours on average a month. You know, we aren't earning 6% interest on salaries paid. So there's a balancing act there to make sure that we don't max out our budget, but also that we can enroll as many homeowners who are truly in need as we can.
I can see that. Thank you. So other question about the assessment going up. I have a concern about families with limited income, especially for retired people, right? So do we have any program to help them if their assessment goes up, tax goes up too much, and try to find and mitigate that tax increase?
That would be the homestead tax credit program to limit the amount of increase in any 1 year. The state sets a cap of a 10% increase in any 1 year that can be applied to anyone's property taxes. And every county has the ability to set a lower rate if they choose. So those rates range from, I think, does somebody still have a zero rate? Up to, 10% for Montgomery County where I live, where you don't get any extra. So yeah, it's when property values rise 25% like they did in this last triennial, and you have a 10% homestead cap, it's not going to kick in. But if your cap is at 6 or 7%, then that will kick in, and your value won't go up as fast.
I see.
Individual municipalities set their own rates as well.
Yeah.
And if you have any case in particular, I'm happy to give you my information and connect
That's
with you on
great.
that particular
Thank you.
constituent.
The last question about I think you're using a model to do valuation, right? AVM or comparable, you talk about comps. Is that how you do that? Or how do you value the homes, properties? Is it like artificial intelligence algorithm?
So this is
machine learning?
residential properties in particular, it's market value. Well, everything is assessed at market value, but we really heavily look at comparable properties. So we use the smallest definition of neighborhood that we can to keep everything homogeneous in the group that we're looking at. And then we find all of the potentially comparable sales, and then we make adjustments to the comps based on what we're comparing it to in order to come up with current value. And then at the end of every year's reassessment, we go back and we do a market analysis to determine how accurate our numbers were. Last year, our assessments came back at 90.1%, and IAAO standards say you need to be within 10 points plus or minus of 100% of actual value. So we were barely in there last year at the bottom end. This year, we came up to 92.5% in the post assessment analysis, which shows that there is another 7.5% of homeowner equity out there that wasn't taxed this last go around. So we're still homeowners are still getting a good value at this point, and the county finance officers are coming after me saying, "Give us the rest."
Thank you. So what's your PPE 10? Do you have use that number?
I'm sorry?
Do you use the PPE to look at your valuation model?
I'm not getting it. I'm sorry.
You don't heard about the term, right? Okay, that's fine. I would really interested to know how you do the valuation and if there's an option.
Happy to put you in touch with one of our subject matter experts who can explain in great depth how we do everything that we do.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Delegate Henson.
Get about the renter's tax credit and the homeowner's tax credit is that it's a cumbersome process to have your eligibility certified. Can you walk us through from the moment your advertisement reaches someone through them being able to cash in that tax credit? What is that process like?
Jamie, you want to take this?
Well, actually, the process is multiple steps, right? And so the taxpayer will complete an application, and then it's subject for review within the next 60 to 90 days. We do request additional information to verify the income and also the residency. If the income is not verified, we will send out additional correspondence requesting to see either a 1099 or your income tax statement, so that we can verify that your income, again, the gross receipt must be under 60,000. The gross income, I apologize for that. The additional correspondence, we ask for a return within 30 days, and then it's reviewed again. And then typically the application, again, once we receive the proof of income, can be approved rather quickly within a 90-day time frame. And again, we are currently up to date with our homeowners application.
Once it's approved, then is it that tax year that they can apply that credit to their tax return, or what happens after that?
Sure, if the tax application was received before April 15th, then it would be applied towards that year's tax bill. That would come out in July. If it was after, and let's say the homeowner already paid for it, then they would receive a refund.
That sounds like a lot of steps from start to finish. Is there any reason that we don't use a worksheet like with the child tax credit or the earned income credit? There are other tax credits that are administered where you prepare your taxes, and then as a part of preparing the taxes, you fill out that worksheet and then it determines what credits you're eligible for. Is there a reason we don't do that with these credits?
The biggest reason, if I can take that,
Yep.
is that SDAT uses a different definition of income than the comptroller uses. So we can't just take their tax filing from Maryland and use it for our purposes, because the definitions set in statute are different. We do have legislation, I believe, a departmental bill to synchronize those two definitions, which should make processing and filing much easier. We have a new renter's tax credit system that went live online this past fall. So it's going to be easier going forward now and going forward to apply online and not have to do the cumbersome back and forth with paper filings. And like I said, the homeowners tax credit system should be going online next month, which will make that easier as well. We also have a departmental bill this time to allow for senior citizens who have received the homeowner's tax credit to have a 3-year eligibility instead of a 1-year eligibility, so that they don't have to file every year. They can now file once and have that work for the next 3 years, unless they tell us that something in their circumstances have changed. So that should make it a lot easier going forward if we can get that passed. Look forward to that bill when you guys see it soon.
Sorry, one minor correction. We don't have a bill that would align the way we define income with the comptrollers. We do have a couple bills that would help align how we define assets, like between our renter's tax credit and our homeowner's tax credit. We've seen a couple bills out there that have sought to raise the income threshold for qualifying for the homeowner's tax credit. We've seen some bills that sought to align the definitions in the past. Obviously, that would come with a fiscal note, as we've advised anybody who's introduced them, but certainly we'll look out for any bill that seeks to do that again.
Thanks for clearing up my confusion.
Thank you. When it comes to the $60,000 income threshold, the cap there, does it have any sort of delineation for household size? If you're one person making $60,000, is it treated the same way as one person that has 3 children that earn $60,000?
The way it's written in statute is it's a 60,000 gross household income. So that's total
no
for the entire.
delineation.
No.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Delegate Long.
Madam Chair, I've heard a lot about the tax reassessment values. In my district, we've had some pretty substantial tax increases. And I know from being a real estate broker, I know the market in my area has not been most robust. How do you justify, and I'm trying to get this where I can explain to people, if there's no comparable sales to justify some of these new tax assessments, how far do you go away? I mean, as a realtor, we have an area that we try to stay in. I'm sure that if you don't have a sale within that area, you can probably go out further.
Sure.
Okay. To what point do you consider, like if you're in Essex and you have a waterfront in Essex and you have a waterfront in Edgemere, and there's not no comparable sales, how do you go about justifying using a Essex sale to a Miller's Island sale or something of that nature?
Well, there's some art to the science as well here in making adjustments for neighborhood desirability factors that might show a difference in those properties, but still allow you to make an apples to apples comparison. This past year, the very steep rise and steep and unexpected rise in interest rates caught a lot of people off guard, and we did see far fewer sales than in years previous. But the problem is those sales that were happening were still going up in value, or at the very least, the market was holding. We're not seeing drops in values to go along with the drop in sales activity. So if we have to get a little bit more creative in finding comps, then that's what we do. But we can't just not value a property because nothing has sold around it lately. And for any constituents that have an issue with their assessment, I would highly advise that they file an appeal. But you mentioned taxes going up. Taxes shouldn't be going up. The local, the county government should be following the constant yield law, which says they should be getting the same amount of revenue every year. So when your value of your home goes up, the tax rate should be going down commensurate with that. If they're keeping their tax rate the same, then they're raising taxes.
Sorry. Constant yield rate, that's another discussion. I guess the question I have for you is, since the market has been kind of, since there's been a limited amount of sales, we've seen bidding wars, people wanting to buy a house. How do you take that into consideration when you're reevaluating a property owner that's been there for 30 years, 20 years?
It's affecting the market.
I understand.
Bidding wars affect the market. Every sale that happens is a new comp, and that needs to be looked at in the valuation. For somebody who's been in their home for 30 years, they have my sympathy if they don't want to sell. But when it's time for them to sell, I guarantee you they're not going to go and put it on the market for less than the appraised value or the assessed value. Well, they're going to go and try to get, every penny they can from it.
Right. Okay. But the only thing is, you're asking taxpayers to pay on property taxes that they haven't really realized.
I'm telling property the owners what their property is worth. It's all I do.
Okay. One last question. I know that you guys, when you do assessment, you do basically, you try to get a like kind property. I'm sure you have a formula how you subtract certain things in the head. Since you can't actually physically go inside a house, what would you consider that property tax owners could point out to you that would help lower that assessment?
If we have incorrect data about what's inside their house, then they need to let us know. They need to look up the property record that we have online. We're one of the only states that have all that information available, free and easy to access online. They can find out, do we have your house listed with a finished basement? Do we have the correct number of bedrooms and bathrooms? It's things like that. If you want to tell us that your house has exposed wiring and is really falling apart, then you can send us pictures and we can take that into consideration in an appeal. But we're not looking at that on the front end ever.
Right. Well, one last thing. I have been through the appeals process, believe me, many times. One of the things that I have noticed that, again, you're assessing somebody's house at one value and you're taking another from a different area. With the market the way it is, I just feel it's unfair to property owners. And I think we should be able to come up with a different solution. And, some way we can mitigate 25% tax increase. I mean, people are struggling from day to day just to hold on, pay their taxes. Gas, electric's going up. Everything's going up. People only have so much income coming in. I'm just asking, from my constituents that I hear from every day, they can't keep up with it.
Everything is going up, but I'm merely reporting on the market.
Okay, thank you.
And just for everyone's awareness, the 25% refers to the assessed value of the properties, and that actually gets phased in over the next 3 years. So people aren't seeing a 25% jump in their tax bill.
Well, that's if it's not owner occupied, yes.
Right.
So if it's a rental property, yeah, you get hit the whole note. Believe me, I see.
Oh,
it
for
all.
commercial properties.
No, for rental properties, like a single individual, single house. If it's a rental property, you get the entire assessment hit all one time because you don't get the homestead property tax credit. Am I correct?
True.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. With the rental tax credit, why don't they just take and adjust the way the houses are assessed? So when the landlord gets their tax bill, it doesn't affect the rent that much. Because I'm not a mathematician, but I just think that the rent tax credit they get compared to the rental, the tax assessments going up, I don't think they work out. That's my personal opinion. If I was a mathematician, I would be more glad to work it out, but just off the top of my head, it doesn't seem like it worked. And thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you.
Delegate Wells and then Delegate Buckle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just had a couple of questions on the renter's tax credit. I think my colleague from Anne Arundel helped clear up some things that I had as well. But the first I have is, is there data by county or city level? If there is, in terms of who's claiming those credits, where can we find that?
We do have that and we can send that to you.
Okay, thank you. And then the last this question was prompted in the kind of dialogue earlier with my colleague from the Eastern Shore about there was the mentioning of pass-through of the renter's tax credit to tenants. Of the landlord. So if you could explain a little bit more, how involved is a landlord in that process? Are they notified that the renter got a tax credit? So I'm just curious, to understand.
The landlord's not a part of the process at all. This is, again, making the assumption that the landlord is already passing through his property tax credits to his tenants, that the tenant then is eligible for this program to help offset some of that rent increase that was owing to their the property taxes. But
Okay.
again, this is a behind the scenes thing on the intentions. There's no direct correlation that anyone has to show or prove
Okay,
to get this.
thank you. Because I was thinking it was if a individual receives the credit, then there is the idea that the landlord would somehow find a way to.
Right.
That's where my.
So the homeowner's credit gets put toward their toward their property tax bill. The renter's tax credit is a direct payment to the renter, who can then spend it on whatever they want.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm the last questions. We had a lot of questions today. I've done, I think, 10 years of STAT briefings. I've never seen so many questions. So that leads me to this. I drove down here last night from Western Maryland through the snow, the morass. It took 4 hours to get here. It normally takes 2.5 hours. So I listened to the radio a lot. And I heard a report from WTOP Washington news station. They talked about Arlington County, Virginia. Do we think that Northern Virginia's housing market is somehow depressed or not as hot as the housing markets across Maryland? You guys have any insight into that?
I don't.
And I'll tell you why. Secretary Higgs and I are friends. He knows I'm an attorney. I'm not trying to ask you a gotcha question. That's unfair. But Arlington County, Virginia only increased their residential property assessments by about 4.2%. They just announced that yesterday, 4.2%. In my personal experience, having lived in Northern Virginia, if you look at a lot of statistics, Fairfax County, Arlington County, Loudoun County are actually some of the fastest growing, hottest real estate markets in the country. And their property assessments went up 4 points for residential owned. But you indicated that the average for Maryland, I don't want to get it wrong, was like somewhere around 25%. So even spread over 3 years, that would be 8-point-something%. So it's not, it seems to be substantially higher, the assessment increases in Maryland, than what they are in our cousins across the river.
Sure.
In Northern Virginia. Is there a rationale for that necessarily?
I'm going to speculate a little bit based on anecdotal evidence from what I've seen. I don't know. I haven't reviewed their reassessment numbers in Virginia or taken a deep dive into the data. But Northern Virginia is building a lot more houses than Maryland is right now. Loudoun County, Fairfax County, you mentioned, these guys are adding housing stock at a much higher rate than Maryland is, most areas in Maryland. And we have, with very little new stock coming on the market, it is putting a lot of pressure on existing housing stock.
And that's an interesting, I live, as you well know, I live very close to West Virginia, right across the Potomac River from West Virginia. I can tell you that where we live, Allegheny County, Washington County, Garrett County, parts of Frederick County, sort of southern Frederick County, there is much more home construction and people buying homes in our neighboring counties in other states. And you hear from people in part, it's because of the property taxes. There's a variety of factors. It's cheaper to build a home in a lot of our neighboring counties, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. But the property assessments, I'll just leave it. My daughter, everybody's talked about their kids here today. I'll say something. My daughter lives in Kaiser, West Virginia. She's an Allegheny County public school employee, but her and her husband, they live 25 minutes from me in Mineral County, West Virginia. And one of the reasons they bought that house, they have a house that's probably nicer than my house. It's a beautiful, huge home on a couple of acres, 4 or 5 bedrooms, very nice house. Both the cost of the house and the real property assessment, the real property taxes, are a fraction of my house or what they could have got similarly in Maryland. And, is there any ever consideration to comparing ourselves to regional housing costs as opposed to just housing costs maybe within, the block? Because it seems like we're exacerbating our own problem. We have this huge cost of living. It's costing more and more. People can't afford to buy a house. And yet the states around us, as we've indicated, maybe they're building more housing, maybe their taxes are lower. They're growing. I thought Comptroller Lehrman's report was very interesting. We ain't growing. We aren't growing at all, pretty much. We're just shifting people from one county to another. Is there some consideration, or what would your department's position be if we started to look at, we have to find a way to minimize some of these property tax assessments, to find a way to utilize the tools we have to bring down our cost of housing as opposed to continue to accelerate it?
No. Short answer, no.
Okay.
We report on the market. The market is what's dictating the housing prices. SDAT doesn't say what your house is worth. The guy who is coming in and buying a house in your neighborhood is what says what your house is worth. And for anyone who has examples of when you've gotten an assessment and you've gone and sold your house for less than that assessed value, or somebody who did, let me know.
Okay. So we're just sort of
it almost never happens. I mean, the market is on fire in Maryland. It's en fuego. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't cool down a hot market. I can only report on the numbers.
Okay. So, and I don't blame you for this. I think we're in a doom loop. I think we're in a loop of every year we just keep raising the cost to live here. We just keep driving middle-class people and other folks out of the markets. And eventually we will crash, as every doom loop does. But I appreciate your directness. Thank you, my friend.
Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll get back in the rhythm, I promise. And thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I want to follow up on a comment you just mentioned, talk about the market's on fire in Maryland. But what I've seen in the market in Maryland is not a hot market, but a lack of inventory. So when there is a property that comes open, everybody jumps in. And if you don't have cash, then you're sitting out in the cold because you can't finance above the appraised value. And it's being artificially driven through, again, lack of inventory. And so in Harford County, for example, typically this time of year, you're going to see 410 properties listed for sale. And right now you're seeing about 200 properties listed for sale in Harford County alone. Right. So that's not indicative of a hard market. It's indicative of a terrible market because of interest rates and inflation and lack of inventory. And the tax assessments are only adding to that and pricing more and more people out of the market because of that. And the only people in the market right now are people that are relocating, divorces, marriages, people that must be in the market. So, I mean, I'm curious about your comment about the market being on fire, because it seems to be the exact opposite for all those
upward
reasons.
Pressure on prices.
Okay.
That's what I mean by being on fire.
Okay.
I mean that if you're sitting on inventory, the value of your inventory is rising.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you all very much for being here. That concludes today's briefing. We will reconvene tomorrow at 1 p.m. for bill hearings. Thank you all.